If I was an entrepreneur and I wanted to lose 30 pounds by the end of this year, this is exactly what I would do. In fact, it's the same protocol we use to help Eric, Paul, Mike, and Kyle each lose over 30 pounds and keep it up while running seven-figure businesses. Now, I have to warn you, if you follow this plan, and much like the clients that I just mentioned, you'll get accused of being on a GLP-1.
34 pounds down on GLP-1s.
So if you're an entrepreneur who wants to dramatically transform your health by the end of 2026, stick around and take some notes. By the way, my name is Dan Go. I owned a gym for 11 years, and in 2018, I sold that gym. And since then, I've been helping high-achieving entrepreneurs transform their health with ease and minimal stress. Let's get into it. So something I realized from training entrepreneurs is the fact that they have a massive disconnect between how they run their businesses and how they approach their health. When it comes to their business, they're in control of their emotions. They focus on systems and they have longer time horizons. But when it comes to their health, it's the complete opposite. There's almost a fear around it. They get emotional. They avoid the numbers. They make decisions based on how they feel at the moment, and they go chase the next shiny object that's right in front of them, whether it be a new diet, peptides, or whatever. Now, the biggest disconnect that I see is that the same things that make you great at running a business are the same things that actually make you great at creating a healthy body. So the protocol I'm going to share with you is what I call the CEO Body Blueprint. It's the exact system we use with every single client we work with. And what we find is that almost every time, the reason that people haven't lost the 30 pounds isn't because of willpower or discipline. It's because they haven't found the right system. And there are 5 pillars. And when you address these in the right order, you unlock the results that years of trying never did. Pillar number 1 is what I call the body dashboard. And you just can't manage what you don't measure. You already know this. You use this every day in your business. Revenue, margins, conversion rates. You're tracking all of them because they tell you what's actually happening. What do most entrepreneurs do when they're trying to lose weight? They're basically running completely blind. They avoid the scale. They avoid the mirror. They avoid the blood work. And they do all this because of one reason: fear. But here's the thing. If you don't have any awareness, you can't change. When you track your body the same way that you track your business, something shifts. You actually stop guessing and you start to manage. At the very basic level, you want to be tracking your weight, your waistline, and also your waist to height ratio, which is one of the strongest indicators of metabolic health that we have. And the deeper metrics matter too when it comes to your blood work, your biomarkers, your body composition when you're taking it through a DEXA scan. These tell you what's happening underneath the surface before it actually shows up on the outside. Now, the other day I was on a call with a client who had just started with us. His name was Eric. And at the start of our conversation, he actually told me that health was his number 1 priority. Now, I could see Eric on the screen, and I could tell that he had some weight to lose. So I asked him one question. Eric, when was the last time that you stepped on a scale? And he paused. And then he told me that he hadn't weighed himself in a few months. And the last time that he checked, he didn't like what he saw, so he stopped checking. And that is the disconnect right there. So if your health is your number 1 priority, why are you not tracking it? So I just gave Eric one task. Weigh yourself every single day for the next 2 weeks. Do not change your diet. Do not even change your workouts. Just weigh yourself and write it down. 2 weeks later, Eric had actually dropped 4 pounds. He hadn't changed anything except for his awareness about his weight. Now, something you have to understand, and also evidence points to this, is the fact that you need something to keep you honest. And when you see the number every single morning, your behavior starts to self-correct without you even consciously trying. It causes you to make slightly better decisions because the feedback loop is active. Now, the numbers are not your enemy, but ignoring them are. So pillar number 2 is nutrition, and I'm going to say something that goes against a lot of what you probably heard. So we all know that we have to eat high protein, get enough fiber in, stay within our calories, and eat the right foods. What most people don't realize is that a big part of creating a solid nutrition system is actually to focus on the timing. So most entrepreneurs, when they first start to work with us, they kind of follow the same pattern. They skip breakfast or eat very little early in the day. They're usually in back-to-back meetings through the afternoon, and then by the evening, they're starving. And this causes them to overeat at night. And when they go to sleep full, they wonder why the scale isn't moving. And this is a yo-yo cycle we see a lot of entrepreneurs go through, and it's driven almost entirely by their meal timing. Now, the fix is not a new diet. It's not going carnivore. It's actually resetting the timing itself. So the thing that we do with clients is first we anchor the breakfast early on in the day. You want it to be high protein and moderate fiber. This is actually a non-negotiable because it sets your appetite regulation for the end of the day. Second, we install a hard stop of eating at night. Usually it's around 3 hours to 5 hours before you go to sleep. You want to set a specific time where you don't eat because in the modern world we're living in, we need guardrails for when we tell ourselves to stop eating. And I'm not kidding you. Just doing this one thing can actually help you lose 20 pounds within a span of 6 months, because there's a lot of people who have problems with nighttime eating. And last, we want to add a middle meal in between, and then this becomes a meal schedule that entrepreneurs can take with them, whether they're at home, traveling, or whatever. One of the key things that we do is help our clients find meal prep services or even private chefs. And it's funny how cost effective that these can be compared to ordering food off of DoorDash or Uber Eats. And the quality of food that you would be getting is also healthier and catered to your calories and macros. If an entrepreneur is making over $150,000 a year, unless they actually like preparing their meals and cooking, I actually don't think that they should be cooking their meals at all. Maybe dinner time, but not the meals when they're actually at work. And to take this a step further, we actually have a cheat code inside of our coaching practice. It's this nutrition app that I created. It's called Sherpa, and it's made to help you make decisions based on your calories, macros, and goals. What most people don't realize is that they're making 200 food decisions a day, and every one of them pulls on the same cognitive budget that you need for your business. So when you have an app that completely removes your thinking and helps you track your calories in an easy way, it makes things super easy. You either tell it what you eat, or if you're at a restaurant, you take a picture of the menu and it will tell you what to eat based on what it knows about you. And it becomes one of the easiest ways to follow a nutrition plan regardless of wherever you are. When Paul came to us, he swore up and down that intermittent fasting worked for him. So I asked him a simple question. If intermittent fasting worked for you, why are you trying to lose the same 30 pounds over and over and over? And when we looked at what he was doing with his nutrition, we actually found that skipping breakfast and eating his first meal around noon was part of the reason he was overeating his calories at night. And he would go on a yo-yo cycle where he would get motivated and get disciplined and use his willpower to lose the 20 pounds and then just gain it back because he was eating all his calories back at night. So we made 2 changes. First, timing. We had him eat a meal within 1 to 2 hours upon waking. For the first 6 weeks, it was a protein shake with psyllium husk because eating first thing in the morning when you're not used to it can actually take some time to adjust to. Eventually, we got him eating the Lean Body Gluff that I talked about in this video over here. It's a high protein, high fiber breakfast that anchors your appetite for the rest of the day. And last, we actually set a hard stop for his nighttime eating at 6 p.m., which is around 4 hours before he went to sleep. And then we automated his meals. We set up a regularly scheduled meal delivery to his house. His lunch was handled. His dinners most nights were handled. He didn't have to think about what he was going to eat. It was just there. It was the right thing, and he just ate it. And what happened? His nighttime eating regulated on its own because he was eating earlier and consistently through the day. The evening hunger that used to drive him to the kitchen just disappeared. And he didn't overhaul his entire life. We just fixed his timing and removed the friction. Now, pillar number 3 is what we call high performance exercise. And the thing that most entrepreneurs get wrong when it comes to losing weight is that they think more exercise equals better. More cardio, more sessions, more sweat, more suffering. The result is they get burned out, or they get injured, or they plateau, or they don't even get the results they want because they're doing the wrong things for the goal they're trying to achieve. You want to lose fat and keep it off. That's the goal, right? So the foundation of your exercise protocol needs to be strength training. And I'm not saying that cardio is bad or anything like that. It's because building and preserving lean muscle is what drives your metabolism, especially when you're trying to lose weight. Muscle is metabolically expensive, and the more of it that you have, the more calories you burn at rest. Now, the biggest mistake I see entrepreneurs make is what we call in the fitness space program hopping. They're switching workouts every few weeks because they feel like something's not working, or they see a new exercise that shows up on their feed and they're like, all right, that looks cool, I'm going to do that. Or the worst part is that when an exercise actually gets hard, they convince themselves that it wasn't the right one and they'll go off and do something else. What most entrepreneurs, and actually most people in general, don't understand is that progress is built through consistency and progressive overload. You do the same movements, you get stronger at them, and then you add a little bit of volume or a little bit of weight over time. And once you reach the top of your strength curve and things start to get really hard, that's actually when you have to reduce the progressions and be okay with making smaller progressions, whether it's in the form of weight or volume. One of my clients, Mike, had a habit that I didn't know about until we started working together. So when an exercise got hard, and I mean genuinely hard, the kind of hard that actually produces results, Mike would convince himself that it wasn't the right exercise for him. He would switch on to something else. This was totally subconscious. Every 6 weeks, he was doing an entirely new program, new exercises, new split, and he was making zero progress. When I figured out the pattern, I made him a deal. We're going to pick one program. We're going to do it for 12 weeks straight. We're not going to change anything except the weight and the amount of reps that you're doing every single time that you're hitting the gym. You're either going to do more reps or you're going to do a little bit more weight. And when the exercises get hard, and they will, That's exactly one of the reasons why we need to stick with it. Now, the first 6 weeks were easy for him. Not gonna lie, they were pretty easy because when you're going up the strength curve, it gets really motivating and really exciting because you keep on adding weight and keep on adding volume. Now, the biggest challenge was at the 6-week mark when things started to get a little hard. And that's the point where he usually would change things, but thank God he didn't. By week 9, he was putting up numbers that he never hit before. By week 12, he actually had visible muscle in areas that hadn't changed before despite years of trying. And he wasn't doing anything radical. He was just not quitting when things got hard. And before we move on to the next pillar, I want to give you one little tip, especially if you're a super busy person, which is to put your workouts in your schedule. Set it for as long as you need and make sure that it's set in a way where it's like you're having a meeting with your boss, which is you. Time blocking your exercise, especially when you're busy, especially when you have kids and you have all these responsibilities that are tugging at your attention, it becomes the most important thing to stick to your workouts. Now, pillar number 4 is sleep. And I want to tell you something that may sound counterintuitive. This actually, for the most of our clients, is the last thing that we work on. And it sounds funny, but the 3 pillars that we just talked about are the easiest things that we can action on. And when it comes to sleep, changing habits, I found with entrepreneurs becomes a little bit harder. And this is because most entrepreneurs treat sleep like it's an afterthought. They're looking for whatever they can get away with, and then they start to convince themselves that they're night owls or that they don't need as much sleep as they need. Now, I'm all for being delusional, but eventually that shit is going to catch up to you. Sleep deprivation raises cortisol and also contributes to chronic inflammation that I talked about in this video over here. And something you have to know about inflammation is that it disrupts hormones that actually regulate your hunger and appetite, specifically ghrelin and leptin. And when those hormones are dysregulated, that's when fat loss stalls. A lot of people are like, I'm eating the same amount of calories and I'm not losing weight. And no, it's actually because your hunger is elevated and you're probably eating more than you think, and also you're in a body that is in chronically high stress. Now, the fix doesn't require you to sleeping 9 hours and being a monk. It actually requires you finding the right amount for yourself, which we find for most entrepreneurs to be anywhere between 7 to 9 hours, and very rarely do we have someone that can operate on 6. Now, when we fix our sleep, we focus on quantity and quality. We want the right amount and we also want the right quality. And we use something in our practice called the ERT protocol, which stands for environment, routine, and timing. Environment, we want something to be evergreen. We want them to be in the cold, dark room. And if you're sleeping with a partner or spouse, you want to have separate covers at the very least, because if there's anything you know about relationships, there's always one person that's running hot and one person running cold. There's always someone dragging the freaking covers off of your body. Hi, Linda. And when it comes to routine, we want to have a consistent wind down sequence, either by avoiding screens at least 1 hour before we go to sleep or putting on a pair of blue light blockers so we don't have any artificial blue light pouring into our eyeballs, telling our nervous system that it's time to be awake. Also, when they travel, we want to align their meal timing and light exposure to the new time zone from day 1, because this actually helps you reset your circadian clock and adapt to the new time zone. Now, Kyle is a hedge fund manager who was working long hours and living a pretty stressful life. And when he came to us, he was sleeping around 6 hours a night. And we didn't work on sleep at first. We actually worked on his nutrition and fixing what he was doing inside of his training, and he actually made real progress. He lost around 25 pounds over the first 9 weeks, and then he hit a plateau. He had a full month where the scale didn't even move, and he was still eating the same, or he thought he was, and he was still training consistently, but nothing changed. So we did one thing. We actually got his sleep going from 6 hours to 7 hours. That's it. 1 extra hour of sleep. Within 2 weeks, the scale started actually moving again. And it's not because he started to burn more fat. It's actually because his cortisol came down. His inflammation started to decrease. His hunger hormones started to regulate. And this created a biological environment that his body needed to release the fat that was finally in place. It's not always about sleeping more. It's actually about sleeping enough and getting the right quality. And for Kyle, 7 hours was the unlock. And for you, it might be slightly different. Now, pillar number 5 is the one that most people skip, and it's the reason why transformations do not last, and it is identity. And it's not enough to just set a goal. You have to become the goal. Is that motivational enough? Maybe I'll say it a little bit louder. You have to become the goal. Any type of result that you want to achieve, whether it's in your business, your relationships, or your body, it requires you to become a different version of yourself. This is a person with different habits, different ways of thinking, different standards, maybe even different friends. What most people don't tell you about losing 30 pounds is that losing 30 pounds is actually the easy part. The most important part is actually staying there. And that only comes through behavior, habits, and identity. So when I started to get my body in shape, I was at 25% body fat, and getting myself down to a normal body fat percentage was just phase 1. That required one version of myself that was very different than the fatter version of myself. And by the way, whenever I share my old before picture, everyone's like, oh yeah, I would love to look like that. That was like 20 years ago, and inflation is real, especially when it comes to bodies. Like, The body that actually was fat in the 1990s and 2000s is way different than the bodies that are fat right now. But I digress. When I got to 19% body fat, getting myself down to 15% body fat required a different version of myself. I had to think differently about food, training, recovery. Things had to get tighter. I had to set standards and non-negotiables for what I was willing to do and not willing to do. And getting from 15% down to where I am right now, which is around 11 to 12%, required another upgrade. Each phase requires you to be a different person, and you have to accept that. And the way you make that shift is not by trying harder, it's by deciding who you are. And actually in our coaching practice, we have an entire course that is dedicated to something that we call identity shifting. And that's the process that I use to take myself from being a broke, directionless, fat high school dropout to me talking to you on the camera right now. And I wish everybody knew this, but when your identity locks in, the behaviors will follow. It is not through willpower, it is through congruence. And this is what makes transformation permanent. So if you're an entrepreneur who has 30 pounds to lose, I have one piece of advice for you. The same mentality it takes to build an incredible business is similar to the mentality that it takes to create a healthy body. You just need systems and protocols like the body dashboard, nutrition architecture, the exercise and sleep protocols that we talked about, and also making sure we're putting an emphasis on changing our identity. These things are systems, they are not hacks. When you integrate these systems into your life as behaviors and habits and as standards, not only will the 30 pounds come off, it will stay off. If this resonates with you, if you are an entrepreneur who's ready to apply the system to your life with direct support, we work with a very limited number of people. If you want to apply, the first link is in the description and it has everything you need. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.